Well, alrighty, gang. Welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. I am yet again your host, Mike Williver, and I remain your favorite. Say it with me.
Palm pepper spray is next generation OC spray. It's hot at 1.4% major capsaicinoids, and its modular design means you can customize it exactly to you. 3 different setups, lots of different color combinations. You can make it exactly as you like. And the flip top safety prevents accidental discharges. It's 10 to 12 foot range and 25 half-second blasts. Make sure that you can keep that long range eye poke at long range. I trust Palm OC and I recommend it for everyone for self-defense.
Former Fed. With me today, a new friend of mine. His name is Riley. Riley is up in the Salt Lake City, Utah area. He is married with 2 kids, one very recently, so congratulations to Riley on that. And he is currently a truck driver. Riley, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
And again, I always say this, I'm sure the audience gets tired of it, but I appreciate you writing in. We've had a lot of folks write in lately, and if it weren't for folks like you, there wouldn't be a show. So thank you very much. Talk to us about your story is pretty unique. I doubt we'll have another one like it. And it's one that the subject matter is stuff I've taken classes on in the past as a law enforcement officer, and there's a lot to unpack with that. But have you always been sort of a self-defense minded person? Is this something that's kind of been in the forefront of your mind, or no? And no is an acceptable answer, by the way.
Not always, actually. When I was a kid, we grew up in a fairly rural area, so we didn't have a lot of, I wouldn't want to say need for self-defense, but it wasn't something that we thought about just because we knew everybody around us and crime was rarely low. We could leave our doors unlocked. But as I got older, after high school and college, traveling around, I had a lot of run-ins with unsavory people, and it started to become more of a where now I listen to like every podcast and watch every video and stuff and carry and
Yeah, outstanding. Well, and that's a perfectly acceptable answer. I think there's a stigma. People don't want to say, no, I really never took my self-defense. I didn't, not that I didn't take it seriously, but if you live in a rural area like you talked about, generally speaking, you don't have a lot of need for it. But evil can pervade even the farthest corners of rural America. One of my first guests was Stephen Williford, as you might recall, who was in a dot on the map in Texas so small that it barely makes it onto the map. Sulphur Springs, I think. No, Sutherland Springs, excuse me. And, evil found them. It showed up at a church across the street from his house, so it can happen anywhere. You were, at the time of your incident, you were a train operator, and we've had at least one truck driver on before, which is your current job, but never a train operator. How does one, I think it's one of those jobs that a kid says he wants to be when he grows up. He sees that as being a cool job, like being a cop or a fireman or an astronaut. So
Yep.
How does one get into that profession? Did you stumble into it, back into it, or is something you kind of always wanted to do?
So my situation was a little unique. Typically, you'd have to go to a train engineer's training school and become a conductor first, which is the guy that's on the ground telling the train what to do and uncoupling the cars and whatnot. And the engineer is the guy that actually operates the train. So they're 2 different separate jobs, but the company I was working for was a transit company, and I had all of the hats on as far as that goes, the conductor and the engineer, and I was the guy that walked the passenger train checking tickets and whatnot, and they did on-the-job training, which is fairly unique for the industry.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So how long were you there before you were able to be a train operator exactly?
So I started driving buses for them in 2013, and in 2014, I managed to pass the entrance exam and get into training. So about a year before I got in, and did that for almost 7 years before I changed careers again.
Now, in one of my previous incarnations, I was a detention officer for a federal agency, and one of my jobs was to drive an MCI bus, the full size, Greyhound size bus. And it was not a job most people liked. I loved it, man. I loved driving that bus. It was so much fun. I mean, I felt like a kid, right? Because you're in this giant thing. You're sitting in this really elevated position. And with a bus like that, there's no hood to look over. So you're looking right out of the road, commanding view. And those buses, when there's nobody in them and there's no luggage underneath, they zip, man. They got a lot of torque. So
They do.
yeah, I had fun doing it. I kind of missed it. So how long were you a bus driver?
So after high school, I went on a mission for my church. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I went on a mission for a couple years in South Africa and came back. And my sister actually got me into driving uh, tour buses up in Alaska, and I did that for 5 years before I started transit and got into the trains. So I'm very
Very cool. So
familiar with
you'd be
the
on a
MCI
mission.
buses.
Yeah, I do. I would drive one in a heartbeat if I could. The most fun part, if anyone doesn't, or if anyone out there is a bus driver, and they'll agree with me, is taking a corner in the city. You have to drive all the way into the intersection before you start turning the wheel. That's something that takes a while to get used to, but I didn't miss it anyway.
Yep.
South Africa
Yep.
um, is not the safest place on the planet. So, is there any secondary, tertiary stories you have about being on a mission in South Africa and almost dying by any chance? I'm just curious.
Most significant one was I was in Cape Town at the time this happened. All of the security guards for all of the stores, like every store has their own private security. Um, all the security guards went on strike because they felt they weren't being paid enough, which I agreed with them. Um,
Hmm.
but being a big white guy with a white shirt and tie and a suit during that time was a bad idea because all of the bosses looked like me. So when came to this train station once and there's all these guys around, I'm like, yes, look at all these people we can talk to. And they started getting angry, and the guy's like, who are you? And I'm like, we're missionaries, and gave him our card. And he's like, you guys got to go right now. And he holds up our card and goes, no, leave them alone. They're Jesus people. They're leaving.
Jesus, people, I like it. All right. I actually do have a interview from a South African guy in the pipeline that hasn't come out yet, but that'll be out here in the next month or so. So that'll be exciting.
No fun.
So your incident happened while you were a train operator.
Yes.
Kind of walk us through. You did. I don't know the end of the story, by the way. He left me on a real cliffhanger on the email that he sent. But um, walk us through in the audience through what you told me already, which is that I guess you drive the train to wherever it's going to its terminus, and then you become a passenger on the way back, kind of like a pilot will deadhead on a flight to get back to wherever he's from.
Yeah.
And then kind of walk us through what happened in your own words.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you on a cliffhanger in the email. I was trying to give a Cliff's Notes version, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm just telling the story. I better stop.
Right.
So, the
No, it stopped
way,
at a perfect time. Had it been a TV episode, I would in the next week. So no worries.
all right. So the way the train operates there is it's a point to point. So and the train doesn't turn around. The loco is always facing northbound, and there's a cab car at the other end. So when you get to one end, you just switch operating ends and head south. So I drove the train north and then became the passenger, and someone else took the train south, and I rode in the body of the train. And um, I took the train out of the yard up to Ogden, started coming back, and when we got to Salt Lake City to the North Temple station, this was in July of 2017 um, that
Mhm.
this happened because I went on vacation right after. But yeah, sorry. Um, the I get to the North Temple station, and I'm one of the first trains to pick up the huge rush of commuters coming from downtown and going south towards Provo. And it's just there's all sorts of people coming on and off the train. I've already busy train coming south, and lots going on. And I remember seeing this guy because I walk the train every between every station just to see how passengers are doing and whatnot. And as I walked it, I saw this guy. He looked a little shifty, but it's transit. Everybody rides transit. And so I just made a mental note of like, there's someone to keep an eye on. And when I get to North Temple, everything's happening, and then train leaves, and the kid comes up to me and goes, "This guy left his backpack on the train. I didn't see him get off the train." And I'm like, oh, sure enough, he's gone. So I go over there and look, and his backpack is stuffed up underneath the seat. And this seat is a wheelchair accessible seat, so the seats flip up, and a person in a wheelchair can sit there without being in the way of everyone.
Hmm.
And I flip up the seat, and there's a camo. Wasn't a duffel bag or a backpack, but it was like a one strap shoulder bag with red and
Okay.
blue and white wires sticking out of it, and
All right.
it's
Stop right
everything
there.
about it
I'm
just
gonna stop there.
screamed like, oh crap.